What's going on, guys? It's your boy Anthony, alongside the best Big 3 account in the universe, Big 3 News, aka Will, back with another edition of the Fourth Man. And today we have another awesome episode, dope interview on the back end of this. I mean, like dope. Like
Very.
probably like top five up there. A lot of interesting news that's going to get your wheels turning a little bit if you're thinking Big 3 and what's to come with it. But first and foremost, how you doing, my guy?
I'm doing fantastic. I got to tell you, you talk about top five interview. First of all, absolutely, it was a top five interview just because of the way that it went. But I don't
right.
think, I don't even think we're sugarcoating by saying this is the biggest name we've ever had.
Possibly,
You
very
know,
possibly.
I mean,
First coach. Just a little bit of a hint there.
yeah. I mean,
first coach.
if you've seen the title of the episode, you know who it is. But
True.
absolutely, for the Dash guys, will be a little bit suspenseful. First coach that we've had, and this is someone who, has had a legendary career. And just in terms of basketball. So I'm just super excited to leave with that. But honestly, let's talk about the Big 3. The floodgates look like they have been opened. We're finally starting to hear things. I mean, my phone last night, I felt like it was like mid-season or like draft season.
I did too.
Hadn't been that way in so long, man. I was so happy.
Getting that feeling of like, okay, we're about to really buckle down. I mean, this is getting serious, and we're going to get into everything that the Big 3 has provided for us in terms of news over the past week. But before we do that, we got to talk about the show a little bit and how you can follow the show. If you want to follow the show on social media platforms, keep up to date with all the Big 3 stuff going on at Fourth Man Pod, at Big 3 News, at A_Siggy. And if you want to watch the show instead of listen to the show, youtube.com/Fourth Man Pod. And for those of you listening on Dash Radio, we alluded to it. We appreciate you guys as always. First-time listeners, if you're coming back to listen every week on Saturday, we appreciate you guys as always on the Nothing But Net channel through Dash Radio. All right, let's get into it. I mean, I'm trying to think of where to start. I think we should start here with the most recent episode of the No Chill podcast.
Yes.
Featuring Gilbert Arenas, Mike Botticello, a guy that we had on, and they just recently had Nick Young on. Now, if you're a longtime listener to the show, you know throughout this 2-year offseason that Will and I have repeatedly talked about how we thought Nick Young was going to be a part of Enemies. I mean, it seemed like a sure thing. Well,
right.
It seems like Gil kind of thought that too, because on the most recent episode, Gil comes out of nowhere with a Swaggy P Enemies jersey, rocking the number 1, presents it to him, and pretty much offers him the team, the Enemies team. He says, you pick your guys, you pick your shots, you negotiate your contract. You can have the money from me.
Gil offered him not just
his own salary, but
Gil's salary as well. So making a coach's salary as well. Yeah,
exactly. So pretty much presented the offer. One thing, Gilbert Arenas pretty much confirmed that he's going to be a coach. We're going to be seeing agents here within the rankings of coaches. But two, Nick Young has a huge offer on the table, and one that he's going to be able to contemplate as he plays in China here in about a month or so. But wow, Will, I mean,
yeah,
this confirms everything, but it seems more exciting when they actually talk about it from this standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And I want to make sure that I make this clear because, this podcast is all about accuracy, right? We're not stirring the pot. We're not creating gossip. This has all been offered to Nick Young. Nick Young has not, at this moment, as I sit here on February 25th, has not accepted the offer yet.
Right.
That very well may change in the coming days. But, Anthony, I know you've sort of gotten more of an inside look on that. I think what was the phrasing that they said, that's a little bit down the road before we go confirm.
We don't know how the league's going to work out. He's going to have to negotiate a few things, but the offer is at least presented.
The offer is on the table. And so, exactly what you said, I think Swaggy P basically said, some stuff I think he was kidding. Like they got into like strippers and stuff to bring on the road,
Maybe.
And he said,
he's supposed to be a family man now. And he's supposed to be engaged, but he's like, I need strippers too.
he's like, I want all the shots, that I don't know how realistic that is. But some stuff that I think was probably realistic is I think Swaggy P said out of the 7 guys on the team, I want to pick 4 of them. And Gil's like, you can have all of them, so maybe. So, I think Nick Young is really, if he's coming to this, and Anthony, you said this to me off the show, but I feel like if Nick Young is coming, he's like, I'm only coming if, I'm going to make this a stacked team.
Yeah.
So enemies are going for it, man. They might be the team that just completely comes into next season looking completely different, almost like a brand new expansion team.
Right. From the top down, from the coach. It seems like Gil is adamant that he is just going to play. He made that pretty clear that he's only going to play. The knees are done. He played with an injury last year.
Yeah,
And he said that because of the age being lowered to 22, he's like, did you hear the age being lowered? It's 22. I couldn't even keep up with Mahmoud at 50 something. I'm not about to get embarrassed by 22-year-olds. So he seems like he's pretty into coaching. I think the thing that really stuck out to both of us within that recent episode of the No Chill podcast, recommend you guys listening to it because it's always great stuff. But
yeah, and our guy Mike did a fantastic job with that as
100%,
well.
100%. And he did a good job within, prying a little bit more information from Nick. He was kind of presenting some ideas and names that seemed pretty interesting that I think even piqued Swaggy P's interest was OJ Mayo, potentially being a guy he goes after. He said he'd want his big to be Jordan Hill, former Lakers teammate.
Jordan Hill was the first name out of his mouth.
Yeah, Jordan Hill.
It sounds like that's going to be the first phone call that he makes.
Yeah, exactly. And the last guy was Michael Beasley, who has gotten a lot of attention. I mean, not only from teams, but the league in itself. I'll get into that a little bit more. But let's think of a team with Beasley, Young, Hill, and OJ Mayo. Now, I haven't seen OJ Mayo playing forever, and I haven't seen Jordan Hill playing forever. But looking just, from their time in the NBA, those are solid players that you'd be bringing in. I mean, enemies. There would be no enemies hate from you this offseason if that was.
No, I mean, listen, man, if you're going to bring this, let's look at this. I'm pulling up right now. Let's look at this from a logistics standpoint, right? I'm so excited that we're finally getting into this. So you pull up the enemies roster on the official Big3 websites. And right now it's not updated yet, but the captain is Gilbert Arenas. The co-captain is Perry Jones III. The other co-captain was Lamar Odom, who we now know, you know what I mean? Enemies had an open captain spot all season. So as far as I'm concerned, Perry Jones is still there.
Yeah.
I mean, he at least still has the rules and the right to still be co-captain unless he decides to move on, you know? I think Swaggy P said Perry playing good, but I wouldn't pick him for my co-captain. Doesn't he say that?
He seems pretty adamant about like flushing out who was there and bringing in his guys, which I mean, Gil's like, okay, if that's what you need
Gil's
to do,
like, whatever you want, man. So
whatever you want.
So I don't know. I mean, but Perry played great, so it's gonna be interesting to see what happens to him. But I mean, we've seen this all the time with captains get shuffled and guys move from one team to another just to find a better fit for themselves. But right now, so let's say Swaggy P's the captain, right? Royce White's gone. Yeah, Royce was planning to move on. But he was a draft pick.
Yeah.
So you just look at who the first three guys are going to be, assuming that Perry Jones isn't going to be there. You get two picks. So it's going to be two of OJ Mayo, Jordan Hill, and Michael Beasley.
Mm-hmm.
And if Perry Jones decides to stay, or if they're like, oh, actually, if Gil, grabs Swaggy P, like, no, actually, Perry Jones is my co-captain, so he's going to be there, like, regardless. Then Swaggy P only gets one choice as co-captain. And so then that, to me, I think is going to be Jordan Hill.
I think it is too. He seemed like that was the guy he really wanted to bring in. Like OJ Mayo and Michael Beasley were more of options that Mike presented to him on the show and that he thought were good options. But it seems like his guy is Jordan Hill, which sounds like we need to start following Jordan Hill just to see with everything going on with him. But let's get back to Michael Beasley real quick because some interesting segue into the next thing that we can talk about is that the Big3 is sliding in some DMs, and one DM that they have slid into that's been made publicly known is Michael Beasley's. Now, he reposted this on the story, the message that the Big3 sent with some thinking faces, and then Thomas Scott reposted that on his own story and said, hit me up. So we don't know what's going on from there, but another guy that we have speculated about repeatedly, he has continuously put out content about his game on his Instagram story. We know that he was in the G-League draft for a second, looking to get picked up and prove himself again. But that's a guy that I think, we talk about guys that are really made for this league, can really execute. That's Michael Beasley. I think he would dominate in this league. I think you're talking about an MVP candidate.
Michael Beasley is an NBA player. If he didn't contract COVID, he was going to play for the Nets in the bubble.
Yeah.
He was going to be playing NBA playoff minutes last season. If it wasn't
Tyler Johnson took his spot, right? Like, look at Tyler Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just funny to see that this is what the Big Three does. I think we always sort of speculated, like, how do the Big Three reach out to this? And it's, just shooting your shot in Instagram comments.
I
So,
thought they would be like calling people or getting some of
yeah,
their guys to like,
but this is it, man. And
reach
so
out for them.
it's really fun to see that. And, it's funny too, another guy who, DeMar Johnson, who has sort of been on top, I feel like, who has been staking their claim to Michael Beasley.
Yeah.
He's like, no, Beasley's my guy. Like, he's been calling shotgun on Michael Beasley forever now.
Yeah.
He says, he's been speaking to Mike about this. So personally, my personal opinion, and this isn't any insider information, if Beasley's joining the Big Three, he's coming to Three's Company because of that DeMar Johnson connection. And if you're a fan of Three's Company, you're going to love just about all of this episode because this is a really Three's Company episode. But
yeah.
Now, listen, man, I'll tell you, I'm excited because I agree with you. Beasley's young, he's athletic, obviously playing the NBA, right? But he would be an MVP candidate in this league.
And even more so, I think he's got a legit shot to take that Joe Johnson route even to a further step. Like, that's someone I see if he balls out, has a Joe Johnson type year in the Big Three. I think if he got picked up and had the opportunity to play in preseason for some of these teams, I think that's one that, with the way the NBA kind of works, I think it's one where he's not too old of a vet that you'd be willing to bring
in. He's 32.
I know. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
he's like a year older than James Harden.
Look, think about it this way, though. Because we know how the NBA is now. They would rather have upside than they would have NBA veterans, which is still crazy to me. But without that fact, think about it this way. Steph Curry's 32 and the oldest guy on the Warriors team. So that's what I'm saying. He's got to be in the right situation where they're willing to bring in at least a 32-year-old veteran, because it seems like a lot of these teams are like, nah, screw that. We're going to bring in this 19-year-old kid who's got like a 7'8" wingspan, but he's super raw, So
dude, he just turned 32.
That's wild.
I mean, if people's athletic primes are 26 to 32, he's going to be playing in the Big Three in his prime.
Yeah.
That's I think scary.
I actually think it's the best time too, because you are bringing in so many young guys. You can't say, oh, you're not keeping up with the young guys. You can't stay in front of the young guys. He got a chance to prove all that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's the perfect situation. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I'm not going to think, in my opinion, that he's going to go to Three's Company just yet. I think there might be a little bit of a battle for his services.
Oh, for sure, bro.
I mean, there already is, clearly. Nick Young has said something about it. We know what DeMar's stance on it. I mean, I mentioned the idea of Ghost Ballers, and he shot me down so quick. So
he's like, no, not Ghost Ballers.
It's not going to be for Ghost Ballers. So it's going to be interesting
warmer.
Where he
starts
goes.
with a 3.
But I wish we had Michael Beasley's perspective, because who knows what he's thinking right now.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I gotta be honest with you. Like, I don't know Michael Beasley as a person. I don't know how he operates, but I can only speak for myself. I don't share that screenshot unless I'm at least entertaining the idea.
Yeah, 100%.
If I find that disrespectful, quote unquote, as other people have, to have their names associated with the Big Three, I'm not sharing that screenshot with thinking faces.
Yeah, I'm not either. I'm like kind of hinting to the world, hey, this might be a possibility.
That to me is me being like, I'm going to put this out there, and what's the general feedback?
Yeah, that's a good
people
point.
People like, no, don't do it. Go overseas. I'm not. Oh, nobody likes the Big Three or whatever. Blah 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 blah. Then I'm like, all right, maybe I don't want to go on the Big Three. But if people are like, yes, do it. Oh my God, we want to see you play, which I'm assuming the reaction is.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna play.
Well, I'm thinking too that the feedback he might be most interested in is from other players, not just within the Big Three, but just in general.
For sure.
Like, what are your thoughts? Like, I don't know if you think about it from like a respect standpoint, but like, what are your thoughts on the league?
Yeah, for guys
is this something that you think I should go into? Yeah, exactly. So maybe he's just looking for feedback from players, but that's an interesting one to keep keep an eye on. But I think even more so, it's like, who else is a Big Three DM? Because they're not just sliding into one guy. Like, a guy I have to think they would slide into is Lance Stevenson, which I know that we talked about endlessly, but we haven't talked about as of late. But you got to think that, Andre Owens and those guys over at Aliens that play with them at the Indieplex, are at least talking them up.
Oh, for sure, bro.
Hey, Lance, you want to come play with us at Aliens?
I mean, when Lance Stevenson was close to signing with the Big Three, or when he was speculated to be signing with the Big Three and with Andre Owens and Aliens, for the 2020 season, right before COVID hit, he was starting to get traction to return to Indiana. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I do remember that.
So at the time, I remember that. Then at the time, everything sort of just, those rumors got shot down because they're like, no, Lance Stevenson is preparing to go back to the NBA.
Right.
And so then I was kind of like, all right, well, if that doesn't happen, maybe he'll fall back and play the Big 3. But we never got the chance to see that. Now, we haven't heard anything about Lance Stevenson or any traction.
Well, just outside the G-League draft, which there was no traction for services.
Right.
Like we see for, I mean, let's talk about Ignite. They have Amir Johnson on there. They got Jared Jackson. So it's not like vets aren't coveted in that league. There was just no traction for some of those players. So
no. So if I'm a Lance, I mean, God, dude, we talk about Beasley being 32. Lance Stevenson is 30.
I know another guy who just come in
30.
I mean, this could be a real like 5-headed MVP race if you get the right guys in there.
Oh, for sure, bro.
Like,
and
which would just be so entertaining. I mean, selfishly, we would love that, obviously. But
we would love to get all the names, but these guys got to do what's best for them. But, the fact that Beasley's entertaining this offer, Lance, I'd have to imagine if they're DMing guys like Michael Beasley, I'd have to imagine Lance Stevenson is a name. I'd like to think Dwayne Wade is a name that they're DMing, God, I wish there was like a way to tell.
I hope they're not DMing everybody. Like they could still use their phones, Like somebody within the league has got to know one of their numbers, right? I mean, with so many connections.
But you think so? But I don't know, man. To be honest with you, because if that was the mentality, why would you even DM Michael Beasley?
I guess so. I mean, maybe it's more of like, hey, we don't want to harass you with the offer, but if you do want to learn more about the league, if you're interested, hit up our director of player personnel.
Yeah, it's almost like, it's like sending someone, like when you get a call, right? And then you send them over, it's like the people in sales. And you're like, let me talk you up a little bit on the league. And then, you're interested? Exactly. Okay, well, are you interested in being a co-captain or are you interested in joining the draft? Like, well, I really think that would like to be a co-captain. Okay, well, now reach out to people and see if anybody wants you for a co-captain. And then the Big 3 can go to DeMar Johnson and be like, hey, DeMar, we just got confirmation that Michael Beasley is playing. You should hit him up, or anybody, however they do it.
Well, I think we should put this out there too. Remember, there is one captain spot open
for Threes Company.
For Killer 3s. There's like not a co-captain spot, like a captain spot.
Correct.
And Killer 3s. So I feel like that's one that they can the Big 3 can kind of leverage too. And like, hey, we do have one team that does have a captain spot open, and you would also be the GM because that's the luxury of being the captain of the Big 3.
They did that with, I mean, dude, this is a highly coveted spot. First of all, they did that with Trilogies, but Killer 3s is the runner-up. That's a ready-made championship team if everybody returns, especially with the way that Frank Nitti obviously is young.
And they had the option to bring everybody back except for one guy, right?
The one Dante Green's been playing in the 5 tournament and what we've seen him in other things at the TBT.
I'll bring Dante back.
But he's a co-captain. But Dante, you'd love to play with Dante. If Dante gets promoted to captain, you're like, that makes sense. Like he deserves that. Frank Nitti is going to be good. It's funny that we saw enemies talk about maybe getting Frank Nitti.
Well, I think they were talking about they were bringing
they want Frank Nitti.
Well, they want more. Oh, in my opinion, I thought like the way I perceived it was like they were talking about other players like Frank Nitti being able to come into the league, and that's why Nick Young was thinking they lowered the age, which Frank's like 30, so I'm not sure why they, Frank was the model for it, but that's how I perceived it. But anyways, it was interesting that his name was at least brought up.
Yeah. So listen, I don't know, man. It's such an interesting time, and these next few weeks are really going to make or break. Or I shouldn't even say break. It's a lot. It's just really going to give us a very clear picture about what this season is going to look like. But I have to agree. Just finishing that question, Jamal Crawford's another guy who I'm sure they're DMing. I don't know, man.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. This is fun.
It's going to be fun. But let's actually look at it from a broader thing. That just shows you where the Big 3 is in terms of their planning. If they're DMing guys, because I'm sure the next question that guys are having is, well, when is it?
That's got to be the first question, right?
So I'm sure they have some idea.
The Big 3 has some idea. It's a matter of, it might be a matter of like how many people are interested first, how many people are coming back.
Because we have a clear timeline now.
Yeah.
If Michael Beasley is DMing that, I mean, is the time marked at all?
I mean,
February.
we know
He covers it, but it's recently. It's within this week, or could even be a couple days ago.
Right.
That they sent that. So they're just starting to do that. So that to me means that they are steadily moving along. Where the fact you're reaching out to guys just shows me, okay, maybe we don't have as much information as we would like. That to me means
we have a timeline on how we need to move. And two, another thing that I keep hearing is like they're posting again, like a little bit more regularly than they have been. But two, everything that they talk about is geared towards the summer. Even like within that DM, it says like, we'd love for you to play in the Big 3 this summer. So it looks like while they do have a timeline in place, it looks like that timeline is headed for the summer, just like it would any other season. So
I think we're going to see, this is speculation, I think we're going to see a late start. And by late, I mean normally how we start in June. I think we're going to start maybe 4th of July weekend, and we're going to end like right before week 1 and week 2 of the NFL.
Maybe so. I think it's going to be around the same time.
Oh, you know what? Also, too, I'm not really thinking if they do a condensed season.
I think they are going to do a condensed season. I think that
I'm not even thinking about that. So it might just be the full month of July.
It could be. And I think that they might, as entertaining and as fun and as impactful they want to make this season, I think they're also going through kind of like a trial run in the sense of, could we make this a shorter season, or could we maybe extend more games and play in this kind of style? Who knows? But all we're saying is now's the best time to be listening to this podcast, because we're going to keep you updated on everything going on.
We had the Gill story.
We had the Gill story.
Anyone else? Mike gave it to us.
I mean, listen.
We have the Gill story before anyone else.
We're over here covering FIBA basketball. I mean, ISO Joe, in the second leg of the America, put up like 11, 9, and 7. Michael Thompson, who played for Power, he had a bad showing against the USA, but he had a great showing against Puerto Rico. They almost upset them. He puts up like 21 points.
Puerto Rico's a great team.
4 rebounds. Exactly. Yeah. They have a lot of NBA guys that are playing for Puerto Rico. Michael Thompson was essentially their most well-known guy. And they had a good game. He had 21 points. He led the way for the team. 4 rebounds, was shooting pretty well, up to the later stages. But, I mean, we're covering everything from that to even this. The Big 3 actually just announced a sponsorship with Monster.
Oh, yeah.
Which I feel like is going to be huge. We talked about it a little bit before, that it's, I guess, the Monster energy, or like Big 3 has a whole new energy, and that's going to be like 1 clip a week. I mean, you explained.
Well, I heard they might get their own flavor too.
The Big 3.
I heard we might see the Fireball 3 flavor. Yeah.
Ooh. So explain to me or explain it to listeners how you explain it to me. What your idea of the sponsorship will look like. So
I think it's like it's a sponsor, like almost how we've seen with Kia and State Farm, where it's on the court, right? So you're just going to see the Monster logo. But I saw in the literature that basically it was like they're going to have like a highlight of like the week or something like that, like their version of like, the top plays. And then it's going to be like the Monster moment of the week or something like that. The Monster moment of the game.
Because I think they partnered with Barstool last year to do that.
That's right. They did do that. They did do a Barstool play of the week. Yeah, so now it's Monster.
Okay. Well,
figure. Yeah.
Another big name in there. But so the Big 3 is obviously doing big things. Jeff said there's going to be some big news dropping this week, but I think we're both in agreement. We think it's the Monster thing.
I hope not.
And I hope it's not.
But we've gotten plenty. I don't care.
Yeah.
This has been a crazy week. You know what I mean? If we get even more crazy news, we may have to record an emergency episode of this podcast,
Yeah, before this one even comes out.
It would be our luck that 15 minutes after we're done recording this.
Oh, that would be
like Dwayne Wade joins. Yeah.
I mean, that
would be it in a nutshell. Nutshell.
Yeah, exactly. Like every time we drop a podcast, you're like, oh, news is coming. Like, okay, well, that should have came a little earlier.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think that we've covered everything from a pretty crazy week, at least from a Big 3 perspective, over the past like year and a half, 2 years. Yeah. That being said, we have a great interview on the back end that we alluded to at the beginning. We have Michael Cooper from the Showtime Lakers, head coach of the Threes company. He joined us for a little bit and just talked about his career, and then we talked a little bit more about the Big 3 at the end there. But really cool interview, really candid guy, and then really appreciated his time on the show. For the first half, that's going to do it. We appreciate anyone who's listening. Don't forget to subscribe. You can also find the show on YouTube, like I said, youtube.com/fourthmanpod. and dropping some Big 3 please out here too as well. So make
Yes,
sure we're
sir.
tuning in for all of that. We've had some good ones, and they're only going to get better from here on out. So appreciate everyone tuning in, and here is Michael Cooper. All right, guys, today we have the pleasure of hosting and honoring a legend on the podcast today. He's a 5-time NBA champion, 2-time WNBA champion, D-League champion. This man's got more accolades than I can count on my fingers and probably list here in the amount of time we have. And he's also the head coach of Three's Company in the Big 3. Michael Cooper here. We appreciate you coming on, Coach.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, fellas.
Absolutely. We kind of want to start here because we feel like you have such a storied career that we would be doing a disservice if we didn't talk about just your career as a whole. First off, congrats to being nominated to the Hall of Fame for the 2021 class. I'm sure that you were extremely honored by that. But Will and I actually talked about it and said, felt like it came a little late. Just, because it's the Basketball Hall of Fame, you have so many accolades and you've done so many things within the sport to better the sport. Were you honestly surprised when you got the call about the nomination, or was it just more of, gratifying the moment?
No, I was genuinely surprised, but a very honor. I mean, I think there's so many players in the NBA that deserve to go in there or be nominated that you kind of like get that saying lost in the sauce. But I'm just glad that somebody recognized me and I'm able to get on the list.
Yeah, absolutely. First time being on that list, and a lot of that started with your career, starting with the Showtime Lakers there. I think this is just a general question that probably you've been asked a million times, but what was it like playing with, guys like Magic, Kareem, and just being on that star-studded team and seeing that all kind of play out? I mean, was the Showtime Laker always kind of the strategy going in, or is it something that just kind of formulated?
I think the way that this started needs to be discussed to begin with Dr. Buss. I think when he first bought the team in 1980 and obviously drafted Magic, and the team had already had Kareem, Jamal, myself, and Norm Nixon, his idea or his vision for the Laker organization was to become something bigger than the Celtics, because back in the 60s, 70s, it was all about what Boston Celtics were doing, winning all the championships that they had won at that time. But he wanted to do something special in Los Angeles. He wanted to entertain the entertainers. When we're not playing, we go to the movies and we watch actors, we go to the musical, you do other things for people to entertain you. He wanted us to be able to entertain them. And that was his vision. Henceforth, the Laker girls, he had to have something to just get all that excitement going. And he wanted an exciting team. He didn't want us to play the old basketball. I think that's one reason went into the drafting of Magic. He wanted somebody to up-tempo us even more. And with that, Showtime was born. So that was the fun part about the evolution of Showtime through Dr. Buss's dream and his vision for the team. And playing with Magic and being part of that special, unique core, which a lot of guys came under that umbrella. Byron Scott, Kurt Rambis, AC Green, James Worthy, Bob McAdoo, just to name a few. Under all of that was like, when you're young, and I grew up in Pasadena, California, out here in Los Angeles, and I had like 5 or 6 cousins that I grew up. We were a close family. And every Saturday, we would go from block to block and play other people. We'd meet at the park, and you know how guys are picking teams. There's 30 people out there, and I got next. So who do I get to pick? Well, I'm not picking these other guys I don't know. I'm picking guys I know. So I pick all my cousins. So it'd be like us against the block or us against everybody else. And that's the feeling and the atmosphere that was developed with the Lakers. It was like we're all brothers. I came in the league. I was in the league first, but I hadn't played until I got to Magic's first year. So we bonded by going to breakfast at training camp. I'd been there the year prior to Magic coming. So I got a chance to know Kareem, Jamal Wilkes, and Norm Nixon real well. And then Magic's incorporated into that. So we kind of grew. So through the course of 1980 season, we just bonded well. And that was the thing, is that we knew each other so well through practice and just spending time with one another, is that there really wasn't a visual or anything we had to say. It was just, we could almost read each other's mind. We knew if he knew I was on the wing, Magic knew I was going to make a cut to the basket. And I knew he was going to pass it if I got open. So that's how much fun it was playing. So it's like playing with your brothers. You grow up and you just play and have a good time. And it just became instinctive. And then it turned into the first championship in 1980, and that evolved into 4 more.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the evolution of, not only the NBA, but the sport of basketball really exploded from that era, from the Showtime era and all the championships you guys won in the 80s, how much credit do you give to where the NBA is now and to the sport of basketball itself in America or even around the world? How much credit do you give to what the Showtime Lakers were able to accomplish, not only on the court, but also in the promotions and all the attention they were getting off of the court?
You know, the 80s was a new generation, a new era. Prior to that, it was the 60s and 70s. It was slow-paced basketball. It was just grinded out basketball. Usually the best teams won. You look at the Celtics, obviously, with the amount of talent they had. You look at the New York Knicks with Willis Reed and Walt Frazier and that group they had there. And now we step to the 80s. I can't, and it's important that I say this. You can't say Magic Johnson without saying Larry Bird. And you can't say Larry Bird without saying Magic Johnson, because when those two players came into the league, they re-energized, they revitalized team basketball. They made it fun to pass. And before, it wasn't fun to pass. It was dribble the ball down, throw it in the wilt, watch him turn and slam dunk. They made it fun to move the ball around. Magic no-look passes to Kareem. Kareem got infected by it, by not always wanting to shoot every time he touched the ball. So now he became a passer. We cut to the lane. Kareem was dropping off dimes like that. So those two players just redid the whole structure of the fundamental values of team play. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about we. And Magic came there, and the first thing he said is, y'all, hey, we about to win a championship. Well, for us, it's like saying, you can say anything you want to, but until you make it materialize out on the court, first of all, in practice, then on the court, and in games, and then we find ourselves playing against the Philadelphia 76ers in 1980, that showed you what they can do with the game of basketball. So he and Larry Bird really changed the game, because it was about passing. It was about do all the other little things. Larry wasn't a very athletic player, but Larry could beat you in many ways. Diving out of bounds for a loose ball, setting a good pick for his teammate to get a lob, hitting a big three, posting up and creating that double team and passing somebody that's open. So we changed the structure of basketball. And when I say we, yes, it was Boston and LA, but you got to remember Dominique Wilkins in Atlanta, George Iceman Gervin in San Antonio, Jack Sigma and Dennis Johnson up in Seattle. A lot of great teams throughout the course of that 80s program that probably didn't win championships, but they were instrumental on us changing the culture and the way teams were played. And I think because we were such a transition, fast-paced team, in order to beat us, you had to get like that. So teams started slimming down. They stopped having the big 280, 290. Kareem wasn't that big guy, so Kareem could get up and down the floor. So I like to think that we were big instrumental in changing the focus, but it was the whole NBA as a whole. Then you start getting the international players wanting to get interested in our game and coming over. Again, the Olympics was a big thing. The Dream Team really set the world on fire by and it was unfair because most teams over international were playing with young kids. Well, we sent our pros to the Olympics and they dominated. And I think that gave international interest. And as you see now, it's just the NBA basketball brand is just booming all around the universe.
I'm glad you brought up Larry Bird there, because I agree with you. The rivalry that those two had, really was such a strong foundational piece for the league. And when you talk about those Lakers and Celtics rivalry on the defensive end, more often than not, Larry Bird was your assignment, and Larry Bird has been quoted as saying that you were the greatest defender he ever had to play against. What went into guarding Larry Bird? What was sort of the mentality that you had to have, or, the tactical things that went into it? And I guess, how do you feel when you hear such a legendary player like Larry Bird, give you praise like that?
Well, I always say that's the greatest accolade that you could get, is when your opponent praises you. And I say this about him, is that Larry was the toughest player I've ever had to guard against, by the reasons I just stated before, is that he didn't need the ball to score, to beat you all the time. I think his greatest play against the Detroit Pistons in the West Eastern Conference Finals, and they were trying to inbound the ball. All they had to do was get the ball inbound, and they beat the Celtics. Well, what does Larry do? Steals the inbound pass, throws it to Dennis Johnson for a layup, and all you hear is Johnny Most with that raspy voice, Bird steals the ball, Bird steals the ball. So Larry was that kind of player. Larry, you have some great ones where Michael Jordan, George Gervin, Dr. J, just to name a few, when they threw the ball, I didn't have to concentrate on them. Because Jordan wasn't Jordan until he had the ball in his hand. Well, Larry was going to beat you, so he commanded and respected a certain amount of attention all the time on the floor. And I would be amiss if I said I was the greatest individual defensive player. No one in the NBA, and there's been some great defensive players, can stop anyone. I wasn't known as an offensive player, but I don't care how great of a defensive player you are, I'm gonna still get a shot. Where it comes into play, which helps me become that individual so-called quote unquote great defensive player, is my teammates. If I didn't have them behind me and the structure of our coach on how we wanted to force a certain player, Larry Bird in this case, I would be lost out there. I mean, I could have done my own, but when he backdoored me, and there were times that he left me hanging out there, I'm just trying to deny him. He goes back door. If James Worthy and Magic wasn't there to hold him up for a second or to not let that pass get through so I can get back into the play, I would be, as Shaq liked to say, barbecue chicken. So, my teammates were big in helping me defend great offensive players, and I give them a lot of credit too.
And I guess I'll finish with this in terms of the Laker questions. Something I'm really curious, I don't know, really gets discussed a lot is from your perspective, from a Laker legend. That's such an elite club, right? There's a ton of players that have gone through there, from yourself and Magic and Kareem all the way down to Shaquille O'Neal. How do you guys view LeBron James and this current Lakers team? When LeBron James retires, we decide to hang it up. Will he be a Laker legend such as yourselves, for the one championship that he's brought and for the multiple others that he's going to attempt to bring? Or do you believe that he'll always be viewed as, maybe like he's a Cavalier who had a stint on the Lakers?
If LeBron had won the championship last year, he would be just a Cavalier who had a stint with the Lakers. LeBron's in the club now. He won the championship. He's in the club, and he's wholeheartedly in there. And not only is he in there with both feet, he's getting ready to make some big waves, because I think soon, if not this year, next year, he's going to catch Karl Malone for that second spot. So that's going to put him in there with a whole lot of stripes on his shoulders. But, a lot of players come through the Laker organization. And I think in order to become that so-called Laker legend, it's not about where you play, it's about what you do for the Lakers, the productivity that you have with that team. And LeBron has done a tremendous job. I was a little angry at him when he made that, the decision or whatever it was, when he left Cleveland to go to Miami. And, I'm not big on that, but what I'm big on is players trying to figure out how to win championships. And it took LeBron having to leave the Cavaliers to go to Miami and play with D Wade and Shaq and understand and be with Pat Riley to understand what it took to win a championship. And what does he do with all that knowledge? He goes back to Cleveland, and what does he do? Win a championship. So it's about players that chase money. I mean, those are dime a dozen, man. If you chasing money, go ahead on and you'll just be that player that played in the NBA. But players that are chasing championships, and that's why I kind of like what Harden did. He wasn't going to get it in Houston. He forced the trade to get there, and you see what that guy is doing now with that Brooklyn team. They are Eastern Conference foe that people won't have to deal with for sure this year. It depends on what they do after. But this year, that man made that decision for winning a championship. He saw what Durant did when he left him in OKC, and then he left OKC to come to Golden State. So anybody that chases championships, as long as you do it the right way, I'm okay with that. But LeBron is truly a Laker legend, and he's one of a kind, man.
No doubt on Braun. I was actually your words were soothing because you were talking about Harden in a good light, and I'm a big Harden guy, as Will knows. So a lot of people don't talk about him in this good light. They talk about the ego and just everything they hear within the media space. But really, like you said, he had to adapt and understand what it takes to win a championship, and that's what he's doing right now, and he's really succeeding. All right, we talked a little bit just about the Showtime Lakers and the evolution of the NBA. Where I think we've also seen a little bit of an evolution is within the WNBA, the D-League, now the G-League, a couple places that you're familiar with and have won championships in. Just with that all being said, what are your thoughts on kind of these other leagues growing and more more eyes on different aspects of basketball other than just the NBA?
Well, you know what? I when I first got involved with women's basketball back in 98, 99, I had heard that there was a league coming, and there was a young lady that was a big-time player at USC women's basketball. Her name was Rhonda Wyndham. she was our PR person, or she was assistant PR person. And she used to tell me all the time, Coop, there's going to be a league. The women going to get this league because women were going overseas to play. The late 80s and early 90s. And she said, there's going to be a league. And she said, Coop, why don't you come up? And she had a summer league. It was called the Say No Classic. She said, Coop, come up and see the girls play. They play in the summertime. It was a professional league, and then they had a college league, and then they had a high school. So I was like, I don't want to. No. She said, man, Lisa Leslie, Tina Thompson, Cheryl Swoops, just to name a few of them were going to be there and playing. So I said, okay, I'll come up. And I did it because I was a friend of hers. So I went up there, and that's the first time I was amazed and wanted to become more involved with women's basketball. To see the women playing that day, Yolanda Griffin, a great player for the Sacramento team, the way that they were playing like guys, banging on each other and everything like that. I said, this is kind of impressive. So I watched that, got involved, started coaching one of her summer leagues. So now when the WNBA comes into existence, she was like, Coop, you come on. She became the general manager of the Sparks. So they hired Orlando Woolridge, a couple of people, and Orlando Woolridge ended up hiring me as an assistant in 99. And he was like, Coop, come on, be part of this. And long story short, things didn't go well with him. And Johnny Buss, which is Dr. Buss's son, gave me the opportunity to coach. And that's when I took all the things that I had learned with the Lakers from my college coaches, some from my high school coach, who's a good fundamental coach, and started putting that into play. And the powerhouse team in 97, 98, 99 was the Houston Comets. Tina Thompson, Cynthia Cooper, Cheryl Swoops was running things. So just working with the WNBA and the women who truly play the game the fundamental way, because now they're playing above the rim, but before then, they were not playing above the rim. Everything is done below. So you have to do the fundamentals of boxing out, having good defense, working the ball around, passing it to each other, working as a team, setting good picks. And those are all the things I incorporated into training camp, which allowed that team and I'm so proud to be part of WNBA at that early stage. And I was probably, other than Orlando, one of the first named NBA players affiliated with that. Now you have so many, you have I hate to say his name, but Bill Laimbeer, because I hate him to death, but I love him. And we had some epic battles as coaches in the WNBA. You got Mike Tebow, a former coach with us with the Lakers, now a head coach with the Washington team. And you just have so many players that are involved with that league. But to see that league grow and continue, and when I got in it, people were saying, oh, Coop, this is only going to be 7 years. Why are you in that? Even Charles Barkley was like, Coop, why are you messing around in that? I said, you know what? These women can play. People are starting to see that now. And you got some great players. It's only going to get better. What it's been 27 years now, I think, 25 years that it's been in existence. And it's only getting better. So I truly, truly am happy to be part of that.
That's so cool to be part of a foundation so early on. And another league that's established, I think, because of these other basketball leagues is obviously the Big Three. Another league that, you're in the early stages of being in, but was kind of a weird beginning for you, at least from our perspective. We have AI there as a player coach year one. Some things were going on throughout season one that were up and down for him. And then season two comes, we think he's going to coach again, and he's not. You end up getting hired as a head coaching job. How did you find out about the Big Three, and how did the offer come in through you for the position?
Well, I found out about Big Three is that the WNBA was playing. I was coaching in Atlanta with the Atlanta Dream.
Okay.
And I ran into Clyde Drexler. He was going through the airport. I go, hey, Clyde, how you doing? And we kind of talked. And Clyde is the commissioner now in the Big Three.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes, Coop, I'm on my way to the game. I said, what game? He goes, I'm with the Big Three now. And I said, what is that? He said, Coop, that's Ice Cube's league. It's 3-on-3 half court. And I was like, okay, how are they going to make this work? And so that's how I got introduced to it. So once I left there, and once I left the Atlanta Dream, I come home and Clyde calls me. He goes, Coop, I see that you're not doing anything. Would you like to be involved in Big Three? And I had started doing my homework on it, and I kept wondering, and just for the heck of it, I said, I'd like to try something different, and got involved with that. And what a league, man. You know what? That is so impressive how they have structured that, because like I said, I kept wondering 3-on-3, how they're going to do it to make it entertaining. Mm-hmm. Well, what they did is they went out and got some former players who still had some skills left. And if I had just left out of the NBA, I would play in this league because it's that competitive. A lot of players, some of the older players, the thing they like about it is that you can shoot the ball, but you don't have to run to the other end to play defense. Turn around. So that's the thrill for some of them. So, but the coach in that league, and I got with Three's company, Allen Iverson's team, and Allen, wanted to do other things, and kind of glad. But our team was Drew Gooden.
Yeah, Barron there your first year.
Baron Davis was there.
Yeah.
I had the market.
Mar.
Maxill, Jason Maxill from Cincinnati. I got a good team, man.
Yeah.
We were solid, and my first year, we wind up playing for the championship. It's amazing. But we went up against a buzzsaw team, which I think was, what's the lack of a better word, was rigged against us. They had Timo Mobley, they had the Big Baby Davis. I mean, they had a whip. And Nancy Lieberman, a coach that I love, I have worked against Nancy and coached against her in the WNBA, and love her as a person as well as a coach, coaching that team. And it was an epic battle that we had. And Power was the name of their team, and they went on and beat us. But it was a lot of fun. Still is fun. I'm hoping with this COVID thing has put us on hold, but it looks like we might be able to get some games in. And I'm just glad to be a part of that. And then if I get that one, I'll have the trifecta of all trifectas. Anything with the NBA on it, Michael Cooper has a championship in it. So I'm excited. But just to go back a little bit to talk about the D-League, which is now the G-League, had an opportunity to coach in that right after WNBA, and had a team in Albuquerque, the Thunderbirds. And our send-down players were from Cleveland, and I think Indiana was our send-down teams. But I had a player on my team in there, Andreas Gleniadakis from Cleveland, 7'1", a Greek player. We just call him a big Greek. This guy was, when players get sent down to the D-League or the G-League, there's something missing in their game, some little small piece, whether they are late to practice or their skill level needs to go up, or it's just something. And that's what I was trying to provide for our players that were sent down. Now, the other players that we drafted, I thought I did a pretty good draft. Brandon Robinson, a kid that's a left-hand kid, just a wild kid, but could play. And my job was to kind of teach them the practice sites, teach them the things you need to do in practice and be ready. And we put together a good team. I had Tony Bland, San Diego State, great player, had blown out his knee. I had Joe Shipp, who was a Cal player who made it to the pros and played a couple of games and was sent down. So I had a pretty seasoned team. My ultimate player was Chuck Hayes, who was sent down from the Houston Rockets.
Oh, yeah.
Blew out his knee from Kentucky. And Chuck was a rebounding demon, man. But you know what? We put it all together, went up to Austin to play the Dallas Maverick team, the Fort Wayne or whatever they were, and ended up beating them and won the championship there. And three of those players have gone on. Chuck Hayes went on.
Chuck Hayes was a baller.
Had a great a great career, and got he signed a big contract. I think he signed like 5 years, $52 million. And he called me about a week after he signed that, and he goes, "Hey, Coop, I want to thank you for the opportunity, man. I want to give you $1 million." I said, "Chuck, man, I don't want none of your money. That's all the hard work that you put in." So that was the big payoff for me, is to see these guys go on and make the kind of money, and at least not necessarily make the money, but play in the NBA, because that's their dream. So it's been a lot of fun. But if I can get that big three, I think I can call it quits and wait for the next thing that the NBA has to offer up to us.
Will, I got to ask you, why aren't we running into like Clyde Drexlers in the airport there?
I don't know.
I was in Atlanta, and I never ran into anyone like that there.
It was actually a fluke, because the side of the airport in Atlanta we were on, we usually don't go on that side. So I think it was just something that was supposed to be, but I'm glad I ran into him.
That's super cool.
Awesome. What you say winning this championship in the Big Three? I got to be honest with you, Coop. I think you might be underestimating the impact that you had on that Three's Company team. You inherited a pretty, I would say, interesting situation or turbulent situation, to say the least, and you really turned them around, and they were a legitimate championship contender. What do you think Three's Company has to do heading into 2021 to get back to the finals and hopefully win it?
Well, you know what? Unfortunately, we lost probably our best player, Emmett. Was killed last summer. year and a half ago was killed. And Andre was probably the best one-on-one player that was so suited for that league.
Yes.
Because all you have to do is get the ball back behind the free throw line, then you turn and you can go score. And Andre was the best one-on-one player in that league, hands down. So it's going to be hard replacing him, but it looks like we pretty much can keep the foundation of our team in Maxill, Drew Gooden. I had went out and got Dejon Thompson, player out of UCLA. And we got DJ, used to be a player in Denver Nuggets. So we got the core of our team. Oh, and what's the defensive player from Cleveland Cavaliers?
Dante Jones.
Dante Jones, yeah, who is a coach now with the Clippers, I think. Dante come back as a defensive player. So we got a good, solid team. We just have to be able to score and stop running up against these teams that are placed to win. Like Lisa Leslie's team the last time, she had I got beat in the final by 2 women, which I love. Lisa Leslie's team was very good. They had Joe Johnson, and she had a whip too. So hopefully I can get one of those placement guys or those ringers. I'll call them those ringers that I can get on our team.
I think your team's working on that.
Win or lose, that is such a great league. It's a great league for us old coaches, Rick Mahorn, just all the coaches, Iceman, Gervin, they're all coaches. So we're like reminiscing our past through the league because we sit in the lobby and talk about what we were like.
How crazy is it for you of an experience to look over, at triplets and you see Lisa Leslie, a player that you had a ton of successes with the Sparks, and now you're coaching against her and she's drawing up plays and she has Joe Johnson. You must be like, oh my God.
Team. Yeah.
That's exactly. That's my
like, I taught you that play.
But you know what? When she won the championship, she paid me the ultimate compliment too. She came over to me. She said, Coach Cooper, I love you. And I just want to thank you for helping me. Because I gave her some pointers about coaching. I said, listen, you're coaching guys, just coach them. They want to be coached. And she did that. But she goes, Coop, the way you coached us with the Sparks is how I used to coach these guys here. Our practices didn't overlap, so I never really got a chance to watch her practice. But she said she was demanding of them. And I was so happy that if I was going to lose anyone, it would be to her. But she is turning out to be, and I don't think she'll ever be a coach because she has a lot of other interests going on. But the fact that she loves the game of basketball so much, her passion and her intelligence is what is big in the Big 3. And she did a good job. She kept standing over there like that. I said, Smooth, you got to get that coach look off and smile. Enjoy that. Come on.
She was serious. She was in it for all the marbles there. I want to reflect back a little bit on Andre Emmett. Man, the season 2 run that you guys had, obviously at the beginning of the year, Baron Davis is going crazy. He gets hurt. Andre Emmett kind of steps from the 4th man of the year role into the starting role, and he went crazy. I mean, I was looking at some of the numbers today. From week 6 on to week 9, you guys were 3-1. You were holding teams to 30 points, and Andre was averaging 22.6 points a game, 6 rebounds, a little over 3 assists. I just want to talk about Andre like the human being, though, because we know of him as a player. We know what he was able to do in the Big 3, like you said, one-on-one, probably the best player in the league. But just as a person, I mean, I got to talk to him briefly after a game that season 3, but he just seemed like such a genuine, candid person that loved the game of basketball and was ultimately willing to make the biggest sacrifices for the people he cared about. Would you agree that that's kind of the person he was?
I would definitely. Andre, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, man. Andre, his whole form was to get back, kind of get the same opportunity that Joe Johnson got. He wanted to go back to the league. Okay. He always talked about the league very passionately, loved his daughter. I didn't, because it's just a short time and we're only there once a week in each city, you don't really get a chance to spend a lot of time with the guys as you would like to, but the amount of time, the thing I'm going to miss most about Andre is he used to, when Barron was playing, he came off the bench. So he would sit next to me like 2 chairs away. But at some point in time, as I was sitting there watching, I hear somebody feel my leg moving and he was hitting me, Coach, I'm ready. Put me in. And I'm going to miss that. So when Barron finally, Barron had to retire, Andre became our go-to guy. Mm-hmm. And then he wasn't hitting me on the leg, but every time he would come up to me during timeout to catch me to the side. Coop, get the ball to me. Coop, get the ball to me. I can take them. So we started drawing up plays. And I told him, I said, Andre, listen, sometimes you have to be the person to attract and pass the ball. because when you're going to the hoop, you got to look for the other team because they're coming over to get him. But, it was such a devastating loss, man, that happened. Yeah. And, he'll never be forgotten. But Andre was a unique individual, probably one of the best dressed guys I've ever seen because he's so flashy, man. And
always had the hair changing.
You come into the locker room and go, "Hey, coach, ain't I sharp tonight?" I say, "You are, Andre. You are."
I love that. I think the Big 3 will find a way to honor him for season 4. I just feel like that's the league they are. Last thing before we go, we hope to see you back in the league in season 4, albeit they come back and everything. But we do know that you're coaching this summer at some capacity with the TBT, the New Mexico alumni team. You're going to be coaching Royce White, who was getting ready to be the co-captain of Power there. How excited are you to just coach in another league? It seems like you and Joe are two guys that if there's a way you can stick your foot in some kind of basketball league, you're going to participate in some capacity.
Oh, yeah. I've been given an opportunity. I know a young man down there, a guy named Brandon Mason, who's kind of like setting it up from the outside, the perimeter. Okay. He's a former coach with UNM. He texted me all the time, "Coop, you ready? You ready?" And I truly want to, but my commitment to the Big 3, if they don't overlap or some kind of way where I can do it, I'd be more than happy to go down there. The only problem with that is I heard, and this isn't just, that if you win $1 million, the coach don't get any. Wow.
Oh,
I'm doing all the coaching, they do the playing. I understand, but you got to give me something. So in the Big 3, we get paid, but it's still about the love of the game. And if I can do it, I'm definitely going to do it because Albuquerque is very close and dear to my heart. I went to school there, done a lot in the community there, and I would love to coach that team if I had the chance.
Super cool. Well, glad to hear that your commitments to the Big 3, and we hope that it does return, and hopefully they offset so you can coach them both. But Coach, we just want to thank the time. We know you're a little limited on time, so we just want to thank you for the time. It's really been an honor and a pleasure to have you on, and best of luck the rest of the year. Hopefully we get to catch up in 2021.
Thank you, fellas. Let's do this again sometime in the future. Love it. And Will, thank you so much, man, for hanging in there with me, man. I appreciate it. You guys take care.
Not a problem, Coach. Take care. True pleasure. That was our interview with Michael Cooper, Three's company coach, 2021 nominee for the NBA Hall of Fame, the Basketball Hall of Fame. Just all around an amazing guy. This honestly, I was telling Anthony afterwards, we were sitting there and I'm listening to Michael Cooper speak and the Larry O'Brien trophy is shining in the background. It was such an absolutely it was like a bit of like a hallelujah moment for me, It was I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that we're getting the opportunity to talk to somebody of his legacy and of his stature. So very surreal. So I thank you all for being a part of that journey. And I hope that you continue on with us because it really is just getting started this season. And, this season is going to be the biggest and the best. I know the Big 3 saying that, but we're also making that promise as well, on our platform. So we appreciate everybody who's stuck with us and everybody who's new. We appreciate you guys for hopping on. We promise we're going to make it worth your while. So again, feel free to check us out on your #1 podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google, all that great stuff. Our Dash listeners, thank you guys so much. We will see you next week. YouTube, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so we can continue delivering you awesome interviews, awesome episodes like this one, and we will see you guys next week.